Good afternoon or good morning, everyone, depending upon where you're joining us from, and welcome to today's presentation entitled Sage Intacct Construction Financial Management Insights, which is brought to you today by Ledgerable. Ledgerable's a B-Terrell company in its 35th year of upgrading small and mid-sized general and specialty contractors from QuickBooks or a legacy on-premises construction financial application to Sage Intacct Construction, the only construction accounting application ever named by the AICPA as their preferred provider of financial applications. I'm Brian Terrell, managing partner at Ledgerable, once again a B. Terrell company. And today, Chris Fira is doing all the heavy lifting by carrying the ball with today's presentation. He's a CPA and has 30 years of experience in mid-market construction, financial, and project management technology. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping reminders. We've turned the audio off, but that doesn't mean that we don't welcome your questions, and you can text those to us using the Q&A function that's there in the Zoom toolbar. And please remember, we're recording today's presentation, so you don't have to take notes. We'll send you a link to that recording that we hope you'll use to refresh your memory of what you learned today, but also use it to share with other colleagues in your organization. That's colleagues who were unable to join us today. If you're here for CPE, today's presentation qualifies for an hour of continuing professional education under the rules of the Texas State Board of Public Accountancy, which has authorized Ledgerable and B. Terrell companies under their CPE sponsorship program. All we ask that you do is respond to the polling questions that will pop up from time to time, and then complete the post-webinar evaluation form that we'll get to you shortly after today's presentation. Once you turn all those items around, we'll prepare a CPE certificate and get that to you quickly. I don't want to take any more of Chris's valuable time or information sharing time, and so let's turn it over to Chris. Chris?
Thanks, Brian, and it's great to be here with you on a rainy April afternoon. And welcome, everyone. Today, we're going to be exploring how Sage Intacct Construction provides the methods to deliver financial insights and visibility to managers in small to medium-sized construction companies. And here's a preview of what we'll see today. First, we'll discuss why you need financial insight in real time. Next, we'll discuss what financial visibility and insight looks like, and we'll specifically see how Sage Intacct Construction delivers it. And finally, we'll discuss what it takes to achieve it and focus on Sage Intacct's tools to improve your data and provide the time to become more proactive. And we'll do this with a focus on Sage Intacct Construction, the industry-leading construction finance application and the first native cloud financial management solution built for the construction industry. We'll see that it provides real-time visibility into the financial health of your company and your projects, enabling general contractors, specialty contractors, and other construction and real estate professionals to confidently make data-driven decisions. And that's why I've called it the backbone of Sage's end-to-end construction suite. So, what are the benefits of real-time financial insight? Well, there are probably too many benefits to list, but here are just a few good ones. First, it allows you to make quick decisions that are based on facts rather than feel. Cash flow. Correcting those issues can quickly generate and enhance it. Organizational focus. Sharing a common set of goals and the progress toward them focuses the entire organization, and it also improves the probability of achieving those goals. And finally, strategic planning and thinking. Awareness of the organization's strengths and weaknesses allows the management to act on opportunities where succeed and avoid pitfalls and traps. Your financial data can yield enormous insight into the current condition of the company, its operational performance, and its future direction. To succeed, you want daily tracking of performance on everything from individual projects to departments or regions of your company, business lines, and the entire enterprise. You want to know, are we winning or losing the battle? Are we on plan? If not, where are we missing it? The challenges are plenty. Many companies rely on disparate and unconnected systems, often with different users relying on different sets of data. Finance has to extract that data from each system and then tie it together in something like Excel. And this can result in several problems, like, some believing that it's just not worth the effort, and they don't. Or perhaps they only prepare analysis once a month or perhaps quarterly. Secondly, when they do undergo the activity, the preparation can take days, and the result is delayed reporting. And often the information is just too late for it to be actionable or relevant. And it often contains errors and does not tie out with the financials. So what you need then is a single source of truth that delivers insight on demand. Sage Intacct Construction financials connected with other key solutions should be your single source of truth. It has the tools to capture the data you need and to present key information in a meaningful way on demand. Now, you don't have to take my word for it. Our customers back that up. For instance, here's a construction CFO that struggled with another application that required compilation of all his reports in Excel. He said that before Intacct, as they grew, the old software became more and more difficult to scale. Just being able to run a consolidated P&L was a total pain. But now he can log in and instantly find whatever information he needs to know. And his 40 plus bank accounts are reconciled daily, and they have real-time cash visibility. Needless to say, he's really excited about going forward. So it's clear why you need greater visibility and insight from your financial data. Next, let's talk about what financial insight looks like. I'm really speaking about key performance indicators, or KPIs, which are financial and other measurements that evaluate the status of a company or operation. These can take several forms, like ratios or key values that might be compared to benchmarks or prior periods. To be useful, KPIs need to reflect the strategic goals and critical risks of an organization. They don't typically explain why, but they convey what or how we are doing. They're not a substitute for detailed reporting and analysis, however. How do you select them? Well, KPIs should be selected based on the critical needs and goals of the company. Each company has a different set of needs. For example, a civil contractor with a heavy debt load has different concerns than a typical commercial contractor. And some KPIs could be mandated by outside parties, such as those in a lender's covenants. Next question, how should KPIs be presented? Well, there are many ways, of course. Comparisons and trending KPIs enhance the user's experience and understanding of the data context. They should be quick and easy to read and have a focus on critical operational results that are needed by the reader or user. They should tell us if we're winning or losing in 5 seconds or less, ideally. And it's worth noting that different users may need different KPIs or differing presentations depending upon their responsibilities. Now, another key factor here is, of course, the underlying data. To conduct a symphony, you need a conductor and a score. In other words, to get all of the players in line, you need a single source of truth. information presented must tie out with the general ledger and financial statements, or they'll be called into question. And it must not require too much additional effort to gather that data. So the ideal source of data should always be up to date, should be complete, and include all of the key data from all of the critical systems, and it should contain the key dimensions of the business, including job work breakdown structures. And we believe the ideal source of data is the general ledger itself. So it's time for our first poll question, and that is true or false. Sage Intacct Construction is the backbone of Sage's end-to-end suite for construction. And I give you about 30 seconds for that. Okay, and the answer, of course, is true, at least in my opinion. So next, let's dive into what financial insight looks like in Sage Intacct Construction. We're currently viewing a CFO's dashboard. A dashboard is a great place to start every morning because it is intended to deliver the array of information that a user needs to keep an eye on. This is an example of a role-based dashboard. In this case, it contains performance cards that are drillable. So if we have a question about a number in them, we can always then pull up a report that supports and backs up that information that's there and provides the ability to drill all the way back to the source of that information. We can also have financial reports. In this case, they're trended, showing balances month over month or week over week or day over day, if should you need them. They might take the form of financial charts, such as the liquidity trend or a profitability trend. So they don't necessarily have to be an absolute amount. They could be based on percentages or ratios and trended over time. Here we have a quick budget comparison indicating our variances with highlighting for where the variances are problematic, or a quick view of financial ratios. This is an example of how we can view the trend of a financial ratio within the report itself. Now, sometimes there's a need for a deeper dive instead of a lot of information spread over an entire dashboard. Perhaps the user might want to create an analysis of cash specifically, and they could each have a number of dashboards for that purpose, containing all of the pertinent information for that analysis. As they want to add new reports or objects, financial objects, they can simply use the Add Component feature up at the top. They can also add filters here to filter for all locations or all the entire enterprise, or narrow it down to just a portion of that. This is an example of a dimensional filter. In fact, a quick note on that. Here we are at the top level, which means that all of the data for all of these entities are consolidated at one place, unless, of course, the data is filtered to represent a single entity. We'll segue next to the controller's dashboard. The controller has the responsibility for presenting consolidated financials, and this is almost automatic. She still has to probably enter some eliminating entries to get a consolidated report, but all of the hard work of extracting and compiling and combining the data is already done automatically. Other tools that help her insight might include maybe this overhead expense analysis, where she can see the current period's actual versus the budget versus the prior year to date, and quickly identify any key variances that she needs to investigate further. Perhaps a journal entry for the current period hasn't been entered for something like depreciation or another area that looks a little bit out of whack. She can drill into that area and explore it further if needed. Now, not just financial users can utilize financial data and dashboards. Here's an example of the procurement manager's dashboard where they're given visibility to things like how much we're spending for each supplier. The procurement manager's dashboard has different types of performance cards that have been designed to help support the key benchmarks that they want to keep an eye on. The activity happening in the current period, also any problems that might be occurring. In this case, we're using some of the configurability and automation capabilities in Sage Intacct Construction to be able to keep an eye on suppliers that are making deliveries that are past their due date. The red flag indicates that we're not quite meeting the benchmark, which has been recorded in a budget. And so the user then can scan down to a report for a little bit more information. Here in our supplier issues report, we can see that Beaverton Sand and Gravel has got a high average number of days of delivery days overdue, and yet they're one of our key vendors. So at the very least, we're going to want to get a meeting set up with that vendor and attack that issue because it clearly has an impact on our project delivery dates. When speaking about projects, we can have entire dashboards that are dedicated to evaluate project performance. So this is a great dashboard for the COO or whoever is managing all of the construction projects. A similar dashboard could be delivered for each project manager that focused just on their projects. Across the top here, we see those dimensional filters, and we have the ability to filter the data further by office, perhaps by client or job or customer, as they might be called, or a group of each of those records. In this case, for instance, we might want to look at all of a particular project manager's results. And when we select one, all of the objects on the dashboard will be updated to reflect that. And this grouping, so to speak, works because when we click into a project record, we can see that it contains various attributes that can become the basis for dynamically grouping or adding membership to a group, such as the project manager or the project type or the project location, etc. On the project overview report, we have a number of columns here that represent key information from the project, such as the original contract value, the value of all changes to that contract with a updated contract total, the budget estimate that's also been updated for any adjustments, and a projected estimated profit margin based on the estimates and the contract amount. Then we have all of the actuals appearing, such as the commitments. To date would include all the subcontracts and POs that have not yet been delivered. Total billings to date, total cost to date, and the gross profit. Notice that we've got highlighted here using conditional formatting any problem areas such as this particular project. Continuing to the right, we can see that for this project, we've spent nearly 100% of our cost budget, but only billed for approximately 22%, which accounts for the shortfall here. That obviously indicates that we've got either a problem with billing or a problem with the customer acceptance of our billing. Either way, we've got an issue that has to be attended to. Continuing down, we have the same report now grouped by project manager using those dynamic groups, and we can use it to quickly compare the profit margins for each project manager and the respective types. We can see there's a wide variability. This could be due to, in some cases, to the project type. So if we continue down, we can see that, for instance, our tenant improvements definitely have a lower profitability than, say, our restaurants. Job costing can also be evaluated really quickly in the form of in a dashboard. And so this is a great place for the controller to get a quick overview. And the WIP report in particular might be very useful for that purpose. This is an example of an interactive report called an interactive custom report. And the user can manipulate the report in a number of ways, hence the name interactive. So for instance, if they wanted to take a look at resorting the report, we'll go ahead and load it up into another screen here. Takes a moment or two. If they wanted to evaluate this report based on any of these columns, perhaps they can move the columns around. They can resort based on any column. So for instance, if they wanted to sort this in a descending view and then identify those jobs that are about to be complete, to highlight them. And we can see here right at the top of the list here is our problem child. This is one in which they probably would want to reach out to the project manager to learn a little bit more about those issues, but they could also dive into that project and find out exactly what was happening on the project billing side directly from the report. So for instance, if we clicked into the report, into the project from the report, and then took a look at the job invoices, we could quickly see the last time that the job was invoiced and what problems there might be on that invoice. Has that invoice been paid yet? Yes, it has been. We can determine that right here from within the job schedule. So one of the things that I should have mentioned for this question is that dashboards can be available to any type of user, Sage Intacct user. That includes full users and read-only users. So I'm going to give you the answer to this one. You'll take a moment or two to update your poll question. Remember, you don't have to get it right. You just have to answer it. Once again, you'll need to fill out the evaluation form that we'll send by email in the next day or two. Okay, hopefully I allowed you enough time to work on that. Um, as we've seen, there are a number of great tools to deliver financial visibility and insight, uh, but uh, they don't help unless you have the time to actually look at and digest the data. And so, one of the things that Sage Intacct can help with is with creating that time through its smart applications and automations. Let's take a look at some of those. I'll segue first to a relatively new feature, which is WIP management automation. Now, WIP management looks a bit like this. You create each month a new WIP schedule, and we'll click into the prior month here just so we can see what it contains. Sage Intacct will collect key information such as the actual cost to date that includes commitments, the contract values, the budget estimate, and that sort of thing, and will compile a preliminary WIP and then give you the flexibility to update it as you see fit. And when it is complete, you would simply post it, creating a journal entry that includes a reversal the following month. Now, should you decide that you wanted to redo this WIP schedule, you needed to reopen it, you can simply revise it and it will undo the previous posting. They are inherently connected, the WIP schedule and the journal entry, and so that it always backs up the other. And so the WIP, the journal entry itself includes a link back to the WIP schedule, and the WIP schedule includes a link back to the journal entry. So let's take a little deeper look at the current month's WIP schedule that is currently unposted. First thing we see is that it's indicating that there are three errors in the WIP reports, and these all deal with new projects that came online during the month. Projects, if they're not, they must be active and they must have become active during the month of the WIP schedule itself with the start date. And at the appropriate time, they're added to the WIP schedule. If we look at the error, it tells us that the CFO forecast cost at completion cannot be zero. It's not yet been evaluated yet. We can see that there's a place for the project manager's forecast cost to completion, which has been calculated here for this project, and a place for the CFO forecast. And it's the CFO forecast that determines whether the job is overbilling or underbilling. Now, the user can elect, the CFO then can elect to accept the PM's values or to enter their own. There's some features in here that really make it a great tool at the end of the month to sit down with your project managers in that WIP meeting. For instance, you could quickly filter your list down by project manager and have a sit down with them and have them then give you their forecast cost to complete. You can then decide whether you wish to accept that value or enter your own. CFOs have some challenges sometimes with determining any outstanding change orders and their impact on the WIP schedule. And there's some tools here to give you visibility to the pending estimates here so that you can determine whether or not that estimate should be included in the contract value and the corresponding costs when calculating the WIP schedule. In the case of, when you have those cases, you can always click back into the project and navigate to the change management area where each of the pending change requests are reflected, and then you can drill further into that change request to help make that determination. Of course, that would be something that likewise you probably would want to discuss with the project manager. After those updates are complete, you would simply indicate which ones you're ready to finalize, and then once all of them were finalized, you would have an option to post your WIP schedule. Along with that, you have a posting preview that gives you what that journal entry will look like before it's actually been posted. Next area we'll take a look at have to deal with your subcontractors. Subcontractors and suppliers, I might add. Construction companies have an enormous amount of paperwork that goes along with maintaining and setting up new subcontractors. Let's take a look at a record, for instance. I'll drill in here to Ace Drywall, and there's a number of fields here. What you'll want to do is to standardize what fields get entered and support that with smart rules that require users to always enter those fields. And there are some things here like whether or not a subcontractor is an individual or not that help mask certain information that can be considered, proprietary today. When setting up a vendor 1099, it's important that you not only capture the 1099 type, but also the box that it will be captured to, the name that it should be submitted to, if it's a legal name that needs to go here, and of course their tax ID. There's a place here for an attachment, but we'll look at that elsewhere. There are also some convenient features here, such as the default expense account, so that when invoices come in that haven't been matched up with a PO, that expense account could be automated. The one area that can add a little bit of sanity is the subcontractor compliance area, where your things like your certificates of insurance can be collected. You can enter a record according to kind of a template here as to what the requirements are. And as those documents come in, the users can check the box on when they've been received and attach a copy to each individual record so that there is a central place that contains that attachment, those attachments. And those are maintained online, not on some kind of local share folder that you might have in your network. Things like all of the liability policies, workers' comp, of course, can be maintained in the insurance area, but you also have an area for miscellaneous types of things like the contractor licenses and Form W-9. The great thing about these records is that we can utilize them in reports that show what's been received and what's still outstanding and what their effective expiration dates might be to trigger users to go out and remind vendors that they're needed. And more importantly, there are features that can either warn at time of payment or prevent payment when certain forms have not been received yet. Lien waivers are one of those things that become really important at time of payment. I'll also mention that you can see that rather than save or post, here we have a submit function. That's because you can optionally utilize a vendor or subcontractor approval process along with a complete history of who's entered and who's approved, made each change along the way. That way you make sure that there are 4 eyes that have seen every single bit of vendor information, making sure that you stay in compliance with not only your internal rules, but also external rules from the IRS and elsewhere, or your sureties, for instance. Another area that we'll take a look at is vendor AP automation. AP automation allows you to have your vendors email your documents into a specific email address, and then machine learning and artificial intelligence built into Sage Intacct will incorporate that and code that vendor. And even if there is a purchasing invoice or a purchasing document that corresponds with that invoice, it will attempt to match it up. Let's take a look at the document that we see here, waiting in a draft mode currently. And we'll enable the view to the attachment on this page so we can do some quick comparisons. The artificial intelligence has gone out and found the vendor and matched it up. They've found the PO number and matched it up. They even found the job and matched it up here as well, along with the invoice number, the invoice date, the due date, etc. All was obtained right off the form itself. And even the details of the PO have been matched up against items in the invoice itself. What can happen next then? It can be submitted by the user into an approval workflow that's routed through the project manager first, and depending on value, it might be routed on from there to another manager that would sign off on the invoice before it actually entered into accounts payable. Alternately, if no purchase order was found that matched up with this, it could be matched manually, or it could be changed to an accounts payable bill, which has its own approval workflow attached to it. This can save an enormous amount of time by your team and freeing them up to do a much higher value of work than simply entering invoices and fighting the process of matching them up to the purchasing documents and chasing down approvals by the various members of your project team. The last area that we'll take a look at has to do with monthly closing. In the general ledger, the controller or appropriate people have the ability to also have journal approval workflows. And those can catch errors in the process. And one of the things that Sage has added more recently is the check for any outliers. An outlier would be a situation where an unusual amount has been posted or an unusual coding has occurred. And those would be highlighted here in the approval area list here, along with the reasons for the outlier detection. They could then choose to either override and approve the invoice, or they could decline it, sending back the reasons for doing so. So Of course, journal entries should be supported by any supporting documents, and there's a place for appropriate attachments here along the way. And then, again, here they can either approve or decline as necessary. Now, artificial intelligence, of course, is a hot topic today. Um, and Sage is definitely investing a great deal in utilizing it to make the most of it. We've already seen some cases where it's been brought to bear, and that is only going to be expanded in the near future. Currently, Copilot has been added in early adopter phase, and we'll see that roll out later this year with the capability of the system being able to detect uh, variances that look unusual as well and report those in the form of insights. We expect to do a full webinar on this topic later in the year with kind of a more expanded discussion, but be aware that this is coming down the pike, along with a close assistant that will help identify the areas that need to be completed to close the books each month, which can be a huge labor saving for controllers and CFOs. And one item already available is the search help with the Copilot itself. Text in just sort of natural language questions can be asked, and Copilot will come back with answers using the comprehensive help that's in the system as the model, basically, to provide those answers. That leads us to poll question number 3. Sage Intacct Construction automation can include the use of machine learning and AI. True or false? Once again, you don't have to get it right, just have to answer it. And once again, be sure to fill out that evaluation form. Once we get it, we'll send by email your CPE certificate in a day or two. Okay, well, I want to thank you for spending time with me to discuss this important topic. And Brian, I'll ask you to take us home, but before doing so, I want to just make some conclusions, and that is that Sage Intacct Construction is a single source of truth that can stay up to date and contain all of the key dimensions of your business. And we've seen that it can deliver deep visibility and insights into your financial and operational data with a great collection of reporting and tools, such as dashboards.
Thanks, Chris, for a great presentation. I know you spent a lot of time and worked really hard on that. We're really grateful for that. And I just want to confirm that you're available for some questions that have been submitted by our attendees.
Sure, absolutely. I was going to leave, but I'll stick around.
the Now's the time to submit those questions for Chris by using that Q&A button that you see there in the Zoom toolbar. And while you're doing that, let me mention that our next webinar, we're already working to prepare, and it will be scheduled in May. And we know, and because we know that Sage Construction and Real Estate, the entire suite of applications covers the real estate industry, and we've spent a lot of webinar time over the last couple of months talking about that functionality available to general and specialty contractors. But you need to know it covers the entire gamut. And so we're going to focus on the developers and property owners in May for our monthly webinar by taking a look at the Sage Intacct Real Estate module. As I have mentioned, you'll be receiving an invitation to that webinar in the next couple of months, so look for that. Also, we're out and about all the time, all over the state of Texas, and available to speak to your construction back office professionals, your CPA firm, your Texas CPA Society or CFMA chapter, and other professional groups on the following topics, the first two of which speak directly to all construction industry professionals: accelerating the financial close, automation today or AI tomorrow. In this presentation, we take a deeper look at Sage Copilot to see how it is automating and integrating artificial intelligence into Sage Intacct Construction. The second one, changing technology, creative disruption, and the accounting profession. This one takes a look at how the once in a generation innovation that is blockchain ledger technology has a potentially a great impact for members of our presentation. And then that last presentation, prosperity through recurring revenue, unleashing the power of the subscription economy, applies to those specialty industry subcontractors providing service maintenance agreements to businesses or consumers after project completion. You may also catch up with us at the CFMA's annual conference next month in Florida, where we'll be exhibiting, and the CFMA Lone Star Conference later this year. Between now and then, though, we will be hosting our Construction Lunch and Learn in Addison on May the 15th. Now, that title, Construction Lunch and Learn, implies you'll receive two important deliverables. The first one's lunch, which is provided by Ruth's Chris Steakhouse at no cost to attendees. And then that second one is Learn, which is provided, at least in part, by Ben and Ruby, two of Ledgerable's most experienced construction technology professionals, who are going to show you how Sage Intacct Construction tracks 5 construction KPIs that you just cannot measure in QuickBooks. And I'll give you a hint on one of those. It's labor productivity cost per hour. However, we'll also have another presenter there, Brian Hunt. Brian is a CPA and a certified public casualty underwriter. And he will be speaking on the important topic of creating risk transfer programs for construction and real estate firms. And then following that, on May 28th, Ruby will be back to show us how in Sage Intacct Construction we can automate the bank reconciliation. So May is the automation month, and we hope that you'll join us. For more information on how to join us, just send an email to construction@ledgerable.com, and we will get that information right back to you. Chris, it looks like we do have a couple of questions here. Let me read those to you. Can you revisit the different user license types in Sage Intacct Construction?
Sure. The first primary type would be a full business user that has access to everything in the application subject to the permissions that have been assigned to them. Another type of user would be a so-called warehouse user or operational user that would be restricted to purchasing, order entry, and inventory. Another key type would be the employee user that has the ability to approve purchase orders and accounts payable invoices, enter time and do things like that. But more importantly, they can view any of the information in Sage Intacct and reports that might have been permissioned or allowed to them in permissions. I think there might be a handful of other types, but a key thing there that I was trying to make was that all of the dashboards that we saw could be subject to permissions utilized by any of those types of users.
Okay, that's interesting that you answered that question, because the next question I had was, how can we control who accesses the dashboards?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, dashboards and reports themselves, in addition to access to the data that can control permissions, the individual reports and dashboards also have their own permissioning that can be granted to users or groups of users.
Okay, thank you. And then here's a question, and this is the last one that we have. Is Copilot the same as Microsoft Copilot?
No, it's a term that seems to be kind of a term du jour, so to speak. A Copilot is Sage's terminology for a collection of AI tools that they will be using, and it is distinctly different from Microsoft's Copilot.
Okay. Well, thank you once again, Chris, for all the preparation that we know that you made in order to present a very quality presentation for us. Thank you to Sophia and Shirley for the graphics and the administration and all of the behind the scenes work that's required to make this happen. Please remember to fill out that evaluation form. If you're here for CPE, we'll turn that CPE form around to you quickly. And please let us know if you're interested in joining us for lunch on May the 15th, or would like to attend Ruby's webinar on automating Sage Intacct bank reconciliation. And then also, if you'd like for information on the next webinar we have in the series, which will be on Sage Intacct real estate. Until that time, the email address you need to get that information is construction@legible.com. Stay dry, and we look forward to seeing you again next month.